We're in the middle of the Mitzvot Lo Taaseh, the negative Mitzvot, and we are on Kuf Chav Gimel, number 123. Shelo lo hotzi mibsar ha-Pesach min ha-Chabura. You're not allowed to take the meat of the Korban Pesach outside the group. You have to eat it in your house. Whoever is there in the group can be there, nobody else is allowed. And you can't take it outside. Shneimar lo totzi min ha-Bayit, don't take it out of the house. Kuf Chav Dalet, 124. Shelo lasot she'arer min ha-Chot chametz. Kohanim, when they eat the leftover of the flour offering, they can't let it rise. Can't let it become chametz. It has to be eaten as matzah. Shneimar lo te'afeh chametz chelkam. Their portion, they cannot bake as chametz. Kuf chafei shelo le'echol b'sar ha-Pesach na'u muvushal. The meat of the Korban Pesach cannot be raw or cooked. It has to be roasted. Shneimar al tochlu mimenu na'u vashel muvushal. Don't eat it raw or cooked. Kuf chavav shelo le'ha'achil b'sar Pesach le'ger toshav. The meat of the Korban Pesach cannot be given to a goy, ze ger toshav. We spoke about it last week. A goy who's keeping the Shavah Mitzvot Noach, he still can't eat the Korban Pesach. Shene'emar toshav v'sachir lo yochal bo. Even a person who's resident in Israel, or your worker, he's a goy, he can't eat it. Kuf chav zayin shelo yochal he'arel b'sar ha-Pesach. If you don't have a brit milah, you can't eat the Korban Pesach. Shene'emar v'chol arel lo yochal bo. Any uncircumcised person cannot eat. Kuf chav chet shelo leha'achil b'sar ha-Pesach liYisrael shenishtamed. There's other versions over here, but the point is, you can't give meat of the Korban Pesach to a Jew who became a non-Jew, converted. It says in the verse, any strange person can't eat it. Klomar, this means Yisrael shenilveh livnei nechar, a Jew who attached himself to the goyim. Ve'avad avodah zarah kemotam, and he served idols like them. Lo yochal bo, he cannot eat Korban Pesach. Kuf chavtet, lo yochal adam shenitma kodashim. We're moving on to other laws of not eating. So from Korban Pesach, we go to Korbanot in general. A person who is impure, touched a dead body, touched a bug or something, he can't eat holy sacrifices. If a soul who will eat meat, but he touched something tameh, he gets karet, he gets cut off. You can't eat, even if you're pure, you can't eat meat that became impure. If the meat touched something impure, you can't eat it. Any korban that was left over past the time that you're allowed to eat it, sometimes it's 1 day and 1 night, 2 days and 1 night, doesn't matter. After the time frame, you can't eat it anymore. If you eat it, you carry the sin, and it gets cut off. Not to eat pigul. Pigul means disgusting, but pigul means any sacrifice that was offered with the wrong thoughts. It's one of the only times that thought plays a role in mitzvot. If a Kohen who brought the sacrifice was thinking the wrong thoughts when he slaughtered it, it becomes pigul, and you can't eat it. If you bring it, it's not going to count for you, it's not going to be considered holy. Rather, it's pigul. And if a soul eats from it, it carries the sin, which means it gets cut off. Karet means you die early. Kuf lamid gimel shelo yochal zar trumot or truma. Any person who is not a kohen cannot eat truma. In the Torah, 4 things are called truma. The grain that goes to the kohen from your crop, regular truma. Bikurim, first fruits, are called truma. Trumat maaser is the part that a Levi gives the kohen from his produce, also called truma. Vigam chala. When we take off chala, that's called also truma. So a person who is a non-kohen can't eat any of these. Shenemar v'chol zar lo yochal kodesh. He can't eat anything that's called holy. Kufla medalad 134. Shelo yochal afilu toshav kohen uschiro truma. Even if you work for a kohen or you live in his house as a goy, you can't eat truma. Shene'emar toshav kohen v'sachir lo yochal kodesh. A resident of a kohen, a worker of a kohen, cannot eat truma. Kufla medhei shelo yochal arel truma. If you don't have a brit, you can't eat truma. V'hu hadin l'shar kadashim, and also any other holy sacrifices. V'davar zeh, this is one of the only mitzvahs. Limdo hakatuv min ha-Pesach b'gzera shava ve'eino beferush min ha-Torah. Usually we have a rule that it has to be in the Torah, a mitzvah. This is one that's not clear in the Torah. That we learn it out from what's called Gzera Shava. Gzera Shava means that the same word appears in 2 places in the Torah, so we can attach the laws. We learn from tradition that the prohibition of an uncircumcised person to eat holy sacrifices is actually part of the laws of the Torah. It's not midrabanan, it's not a rabbi's law. Kuf Lamed Vav 136 Shelo yochal kohen tameh truma. If a kohen is impure, he can't eat truma. Shene'emar ish mizaracha b'kodashim lo yochal. If a man from your children is impure, he can't eat holy. Kuf lamed zayin shelo tochal chalala kodesh. A woman who was born from a forbidden kohen union. We're going to see soon that a kohen can't marry certain women. If he does and they have a kid, she's called a chalala. Or if a kohen marries a woman who herself is forbidden, she becomes a chalala. So both the wife and the kids, these women that are married to a Kohen improperly or born from an improper Kohen union, she cannot eat truma. Lo trumot v'lo chazev ashok. She can't eat truma. She can't eat the portions of sacrifice that the Kohen usually gets, the chest and the thigh. Shene'amaru bat Kohen ki tiyeh li'ish zar. If a Jewish Kohen woman gets married to a wrong man, he bitrumat hakodashim lo tochel. She cannot eat any holy sacrifices. Kuf lamed chet. Shelo te'achel minchat kohen. Whenever a kohen brings a sacrifice of flour, you don't eat it. Shenemar v'chol minchat kohen kalil tiyeh lo te'achel. The mincha of a kohen is completely burnt, you don't eat it. Kuf lamed tet. Shelo le'achol b'sar chataot hana'asot bifnim. There's two kinds of sin offerings. Some are done on the outside mizbeach, and some have the blood sprinkled inside the kodesh, inside the holy temple area. So if you have a chatat that's done inside, you don't eat the meat. Shenemar v'chol chatat asher yuva midama. Any chatat that you bring its blood inside, you don't eat the meat. Kuf mem. Shelo le'achol psolei mukdashin she'utal lahem mum bekavana. If you have a sacrifice that was somebody made a blemish purposely, you can't eat it. Yesterday we saw that you can't purposely make a mum bekodashim. You can't purposely hurt. If you did, you also can't eat the meat. Shene'emar lo tochal kol to'eva. Don't eat anything disgusting. What does that mean? We learned from tradition. We're talking about a specific case of disqualified sacrifices that somebody put a mum inside it. Kuf mem aleph. Now we have a very interesting next 8 mitzvot. There's one pasuk that says, Lo tuchal le'echol bisharecha. You can't eat in your gates this and this and this and this and this. So we learn from that pasuk 8 different mitzvot. We're going to go through all of them right now. Kuf mem aleph. Shelo le'echol ma'asar sheni shel dagan chutz l'Yerushalayim. Second tithe. When a person has a crop, he takes part of it, gives it to the Kohen. Part it gives to the Levi. And then the next part he keeps for himself, but it's holy. He has to eat it in Yerushalayim. You're not allowed to eat grain ma'aser sheni outside of Yerushalayim. Shene'emar lo tuchal le'echol b'sharecha ma'asar degoncha. You cannot eat in your gates. In your gates means anywhere in Israel, outside the main city. You can't eat the tithe of your grain. Kuf mem bet. If you have wine maaser sheni, same thing. You can't eat outside Yerushalayim. Shene'emar tiroshcha. The next word is in the verse is lo tuchal le'echol b'sharecha maasar degoncha tiroshcha. So you can't eat the wine either. Grain, wine, grape wine, exactly. Kuf mem gimel shelo le'echol maaser sheni shel yitzhar chutz l'Yerushalayim. No maaser sheni of oil outside of Yerushalayim. Shene'emar. The next word in the verse v'yitzarecha. Can't eat the oil. Kuf mem daled shelo le'echol bechor tamim. If you have a firstborn that has no blemish, you have to bring it as a sacrifice. You can't eat it outside of Yerushalayim. Shene'emar lo tuchal, the same verse. You can't eat what? Uvchorot, firstborns. Kuf mem hey shelo yochlu haKohanim chatat ve'asham chutz la'azara. Any sin offering or guilt offering, the Kohanim typically they have to eat it, but they can't eat it outside of the courtyard of the temple. Shene'emar lo tuchal, you cannot eat b'korcha v'tzonecha. You can't eat cattle and sheep. What are we talking about? We learned from tradition, Shalo b'hakatuv. Ella, the verse is coming to tell us, Le'asor b'sar chataot v'ashamot chutz la'azara, to forbid sin offering meat outside of the azara. Anything which we eat outside of its normal place, Lo tuchal le'echol b'sharecha ekrabo. I apply to it the principle of you can't eat it in your gates. It means anything that has a designed place, you can't eat it outside of the designed place. So chatat v'asham have to be eaten in the courtyard. You can't eat it outside the courtyard. Kuf mem vav. Shelo le'echol b'sar ha'olah. Anytime you bring a donation of a sacrifice to the Bet HaMikdash, it's burnt on the mizbeach completely. You don't eat it at all. Shene'emar lo tuchal, you can't eat unedarecha asher tidor. Any promises that you bring, klomar, that means lo tuchal le'echol nedarecha asher tidor. Any promise that you bring as a sacrifice, you can't eat it. The zuhi azhara shel kol mo'el. In fact, we learn from here the negative commandment of using anything that's holy. Shelo yehaneh min hakodashim ha'asurim le'anot mehem. If you can't have pleasure from holiness, you can't. This is the source. V'im nehana ma'al. If you have pleasure, you have committed what's called me'ilah, which means sacrilege. It's like you're rebelling against Hashem. You've made something holy and you're eating it. If you take a cow, you say, parazeh kodesh. This cow is holy. The second you said that, now you can't use it. You can't ride on it. You can't use it to plow your field. You can't slaughter it and have the meat. You said it's holy, now it's holy.
Why would you say it's holy? Just because?
Because you want to bring it as a korban.
Oh.
Let's say you live in Tel Aviv. You want to bring it to Yerushalayim in a month from now. But the whole month, now you can't use it. Kuf Mem Zayin 147 Shalo Yalechol Besar Kodashim Kalim Kodem Zrikat Damim. Sometimes you bring what's called Kodashim Kalim, lighter sacrifices. That's the ones that you eat, the Kohanim eat. You can't eat it before you sprinkle the blood on the Mizbeach. Shene'emar lo tuchal v'nidvotecha. You can't eat certain donations. Klomar lo tuchal le'echol nidvotecha ad sheyizarek damam. You can't eat your donations till you sprinkle the blood. Kuf memchet. Shelo yochal zar b'sar kodshei kodashim. A stranger, non-Kohen, can't eat any of the holiest sacrifices, like chatat, asham, etc. Shene'emar v'zar lo yochal ki kodashim. A stranger can't eat it because it's holy. Kuf memtet, the last one from this verse, Shelo yochal kohen bikurim kodam hanacha ba'azara. A Kohen can't eat the bikurim before you put it down in the temple. Shene'emar lo tuchal utrumat yadecha. You can't eat the donations. This refers to elu habikurim. Now we move to other isurei achila. Shelo le'echol, kuf nun. Shelo le'echol ma'aser sheni b'tum'a va'afilu b'Yerushalayim. If you have second tithe fruit, but it's impure, you can't eat it even in Yerushalayim. Until you redeem it. I did not use it when it was impure. You can't eat maaser sheni if you are in mourning. I didn't eat when I was in pain. Aninut means before the dead body was buried. After it's buried, you go into avelut. But before it's buried, it's aninut. It's a higher level of mourning. So you can't eat maaser sheni when you're aninut. Kufnun bet. If you have second tithe fruit, but you live too far from Jerusalem, so you convert it to money and you take the money to Jerusalem. So that money you have to use for food and drink. You can't use it, stuff that's not food and drink. Part of the declaration that you make to Hashem is, I didn't use anything for dead bodies. Now, what does it mean? Anything which is outside of the needs of a live body, I apply to it the term dead. Dead means if it's not to feed my body. Kufnun Gimel. You can't eat tevel. What is tevel? It means something which grows from the ground. That's obligated to take food from it, give it to the Kohen and the Levi. But you didn't yet take it. It's called tevel in that state. You can't desecrate the holiness of Israel. It means if you're going to take it to God soon, you can't make them weak there, you can't make them unholy and eat them while they're in their state of tevel. You can't give the gifts of food out of order. Truma before bikurim, v'lo ma'aser rishon litruma, v'lo ma'aser sheni before rishon, ela motzi'in al haseder. You have to give it in order. Bikurim tchila, first the first fruits. V'achar kach truma gdola, then a big truma, that's truma to a Kohen. V'achar kach ma'aser rishon, afterwards the first ma'aser for the Levi. V'achar kach ma'aser sheni, and then the second tithe for yourself. Shene'emar mele'atcha v'dimacha lo ta'acher. Your new produce and the separation from that produce, you can't delay it. Lo ta'acher davar hara'oi lahagdimo. Don't give later what you should have given earlier. Kuf nun hey. Shelo la'acher hanadarim v'hanadavot shenadav v'shenadav. If you make a promise to bring a sacrifice to the temple, don't delay it. And last week we learned, you can't bring it after one Yom Tov. The next holiday that comes, you have to bring it to Yerushalayim. No delaying. Shene'emar lo ta'acher l'shalomot. Don't delay to pay it up. Kuf nun vav. Shelo la'alot l'chag b'lo korban. Never come up for Yom Tov to the Beit HaMikdash without a sacrifice. Don't come empty-handed. Shene'emar v'lo yara'u panai rekam. Don't see my face empty. Kuf nun zayin, 157. Shelo la'avor al dvarim sha'asar adam al nafsho. If you took upon yourself a prohibition, you can't transgress it. Shene'emar lo yachel dvaro. Don't desecrate your word. Kuf nun chet. Shelo yikach. Now we're moving on to the special laws of Kohanim. It's fascinating. Today, Parshat Emor, today's Chumash is these laws, Kohanim. Shelo yikach kohen zona. A Kohen cannot marry any woman who married someone that she wasn't allowed to. Shene'emar isha zona v'chalala lo yikachu. They cannot marry a zona, prostitute. But it doesn't only mean prostitute. It means any woman who married a Jew who she wasn't allowed to. That makes her a zona. Kuf nun tet. Shelo yikach kohen chalala. A Kohen cannot marry a chalala. Chalala is any woman who was married to a Kohen she wasn't allowed to, or born from a Kohen forbidden union. Shene'emar v'chalala lo yikachu. They can't marry a chalala. Kuf samech shelo yikach grusha. A Kohen cannot marry a divorcee. Very big nowadays. Big problem. Many people get divorced. They don't tell a rabbi properly, and they want to marry a Kohen later. You can't. Shene'emar v'isha grusha me'isha lo yikachu. If she's divorced from her husband, you can't marry her. Kuf samech alev shelo yikach kohen gadol almana. The high priest can't even marry a widow. Shene'emar almana ugrusha v'chalala zona. All of them et ele lo yikach. He cannot marry them. Kuf samech bet shelo yiv'ol kohen gadol almana. A separate law just for having relations. Even if he doesn't do a wedding with a chuppah, a whole thing, just goes into a room with her and has relations, also a isur.
But how does he know?
Afilu b'lo kiddushin, even with no formal acquisition. Mipnei shemechalala, because it desecrates her. Shene'emar Today's chumash. Lo yichalel zaro. You cannot desecrate his children. Harayu muzhar shelo lechalel kshera. You can't desecrate someone who was kosher, even if you don't want to get married properly. Kuf samach gimel shelo yikanes kohen lamikdash pru'a rosh. A kohen cannot come into the temple with long hair. Shene'emar rashechem al tifrau. Don't let your hair grow long. Shelo yikanes kohen lamikdash kru'a b'gadim. A kohen cannot come into the mikdash with ripped clothes. Shene'emar u'v'gidechem lo tifrom. Will never tear your clothes. Kuf samach hey. Shelo yetzeh kohen min ha'azara b'shat avodah. If you're in middle of service, you can't leave. No leaving the game while play is on. Shene'emar mipetach oil moed lo titzu. You can't leave the entrance of the oil moed. Kuf samach vav. Shelo yitama kohen hediot l'shar metim. If you're a regular kohen, you can't just become impure to any dead body. A kohen can't go into a cemetery, can't go into a hospital with his dead people. Asur likanes. Shene'emar lenefesh lo yitama. No becoming impure to the dead, except for your close relatives: father, mother, brother, sister, husband, wife. Kuf samach zayin. Shelo yitama kohen gadol va'afilu likrovav. If you're a high priest, you can't become impure even to your relatives. Shene'emar la'avivu li'imo lo yitama. Kuf samachet. Shelo yikanes kohen gadol im met. A kohen gadol cannot go into the same room with a dead body. Shene'emar va'al kol nafshot met lo yavo. A separate law. Kach lamdu mipi hashma. This is the tradition explanation. Shehu chayav beval yavo v'chayav beval yitama. Two problems. One, he can't be in the same room. Second, he can't touch. Two separate lotaseh, separate avirot. Kuf samachtet. Shelo yikach shevet Levi chelek b'Eretz Yisrael. Shevet Levi does not get a portion in Israel. Shene'emar v'nachala lo yelo. They have no inheritance. Kuf ayin. Shelo yikach shevet Levi chelek b'biza b'shet kibbush haaretz. When they conquer the land, no taking spoils on their own. The whole tribe of Levi. Shene'emar lo yela kohanim aleviyim chelek v'nachala. They have no portion or inheritance. Kuf ayin aleph. Shelo la'asot korcha al met. No making bald spots. If someone dies, it was a goyish custom to take out hair when somebody died. So Jews cannot do that. Shene'emar lo tasimu karcha ben einechem lamet. Don't make a bald spot between your eyes over a dead body. Kuf ayin bet. Now we move on to other laws of not eating. Tons of stuff we can't eat. Shelo le'echol behemat tmeya. No eating impure animals. Shene'emar achet ze lo tochlu mima'alei agera. If an animal only chews its cud, doesn't have split hooves, or it has split hooves, no chewing its cud, or it doesn't have both, it's tameh, you can't eat it.
Chewing is what?
Chewing its cud, it's food. Kuvayin gimel, shelo le'echol dag tameh. No eating non-kosher fish. Shene'emar v'sheket ziyu lachem mibsaram lo tochelu. They should be disgusting, you can't eat their meat. Kuvayin dalet, shelo le'echol of tameh. You can't eat unkosher birds. Shene'emar v'et ele teshakzu min ha'of lo ye'achlu. You have to treat them as disgusting from the birds, you can't eat them. Kuvayin hey, shelo le'echol sheretz ha'of. Sheretz ha'of means flying insects. You can't eat them. Shene'emar kol sheretz ha'of tameu lachem lo ye'achelu. Any flying insects you cannot eat, they're impure to you. Kuf ayin vav. Shelo le'echol sheretz ha'aretz. You can't eat creepy crawlies that breed on the ground.
Creeps.
Yes. Shene'emar v'chol ha'sheretz ha'sheretz ha'aretz sheketzu lo ye'achel. If it grows in the ground, it breeds in the ground, you can't eat it. Kuf ayin zayin. Shelo le'echol remes ha'aretz. Remes ha'aretz means anything that crawls on the ground, even if it doesn't breed on the ground, like a snake, for example, is included in this. Shene'emar v'lo ttamut amshotechem b'chol ha'sheretz haromes ha'aretz. You can't make your soul impure with any crawly that crawls on the ground. Kuf ayin chet. Shelo le'echol tolat ha'perot keshetetzeh la'avir. Worms that grow in fruit, when they go out to the air, you can't eat them. Shene'emar lechol ha'sheretz ha'sheretz la'aretz lo tochlum. Another verse that says creepy crawlies you can't eat. This is a reference to worms and fruit. Kuf ayin tet. Shelo le'echol sheretz hamayim. Any creepy crawlies that breed in the water, you can't eat. Shene'emar al teshaktzut nafshotechem b'chol ha'sheretz ha'sheretz. Do not make yourself disgusting with crawlies in the water. Kuf pei shelo le'echol meta. Oh, you can't eat dead carcass, any dead animal. Shene'emar lo tochlu kol nevila. Any dead carrion. Kuf pei aleph shelo le'echol trefa. Any animal that got a wound and it's going to die within 12 months is called a trefa. You can't eat it. Shene'emar uvasar basle trefa lo tochelu. No eating treif. Treif, I know today we use like for anything non-kosher, but treif really means it was ripped up. Kuf pei bet. Shelo le'echol ever min achai. You're not allowed to eat a limb from a living animal. Shene'emar lo tochal nefesh im habasar. No eating the soul with the meat. That means you can't eat the meat while the soul is still in it, while it's still alive. Kuf pei gimel. Shelo le'echol gidan asher. A special sciatic nerve. You can't eat the nerve in the animal. Shene'emar al ken lo yachlu v'nei Yisrael gidan asher. The Jews should not eat the sciatic nerve. Kuf pei dalet. Shelo le'echol dam. No eating blood. Shene'emar v'chol dam lo tochlu. Cannot eat blood. Kuf pei hey shelo le'echol chilev. You can't eat certain fats in the animal. Shene'emar kol chilev shor v'chesev va'ez lo tochelu. You can't eat the fat of an ox, of a sheep, of a goat.
Today when we buy meat, doesn't have any.
Doesn't have, because chilev mostly is in the back half of the animal. There used to be a custom that the Jews used to like take apart the animal, eat all the kosher stuff, take away the non-kosher stuff. Today, in any Jewish slaughterhouse, the whole back half of the animal goes to the goyim. Finished. We don't deal with it. Kuf pei vav. Shelo levashel basar bechalav. You cannot cook meat and milk. Shenemar lo tevashel gdi b'chalev imo. No cooking the kid in its mother's milk. Kuf pei zayin shelo le'echol basar bechalav. You also can't eat meat and milk. Shenemar lo tevashel gdi pam shniya. Says twice in the Torah. Kach andu m'piyah shmuah. Echad li'isur bishul, echad li'isur echila. One for cooking, one for eating. Kuf pei chet shelo le'echol basar sharon yiskal. If an ox got stoned to death, any ox that kills a human being has to get stoned. If you stone it, you can't eat it. Shenemar v'lo yachel b'saro. No eating the meat. Kuf peitet, shelo le'echol pat tvu'ah chadasha kodem ha'pesach. If you have new grain before Pesach, you cannot eat it. Shene'emar v'lechem lo tochlu. You can't eat the bread from this grain. Kuf tzadik, shelo le'echol kali min ha'chadash. Roasted grain, if it's new, you can't eat it before Pesach. Shene'emar v'kali lo tochlu. Same verse. You can't eat roasted grain. Kuf tzadik aleph, shelo le'echol karmel min ha'chadash. You can't eat fresh grain from the new grain before Pesach. Shene'emar v'charmel lo tochlu. Only after Pesach, when they bring the Korban Omer, that permits all new grain to be eaten, and now you can eat it. Kuf tzadik bet, shelo le'echol orla. Any fruit in the first 3 years, you can't eat it. Shene'emar shalosh shanim yeh lechem arilim. For 3 years it should be blocked. Lo ye'achel. It cannot be eaten. Kuf tzadik gimel, shelo le'echol kelei kerem. You cannot eat mixed species in the vineyard. If you have grape and vegetable that mixed, you can't eat it. Shene'emar pen tikdash hamle'ah hazera asher tizra utvuat ha'karem. All the produce that you planted and the vineyard stuff is going to become tikdash. Tikdash means zehu isur achila, forbidden to eat. Kuf tzadik dalet shelo lishtot yayin nesech. You cannot drink wine that was made for avodah zarah. Shene'emar asher chelev zvachim mo yochelu yishtu yayin nesicham. They eat sacrifices to their avodah zarah. They eat wine that they pour. That's the goyim, but the Jews don't eat it. Kuf tzadik hey shelo le'echol v'lishtot derech zolel v'sovei. You can't eat or drink fressing, gluttonous way. But the Ben Soreno Moreh, one of the trademarks is that he eats like a chazer, like a pig. Kuf tzadik vav shelo le'echol b'yom hatzom. No eating on Yom Kippur. Shene'emar ki chol ha'nefesh shelo tu'uneh. If you don't fast on Yom Kippur, you get karet. Kuf tzadik zayin shelo le'echol chametz b'Pesach. No eating chametz. Shene'emar v'lo yachel chametz. Chametz cannot be eaten. Kuf tzadik chet shelo le'echol ta'arovet chametz. Even if it has a mixture of chametz. Shene'emar kol machmetzet lo chametz machmetzet. Mixture of chametz lo tochelu. You cannot eat. Kuf tzadik tet, shelo le'echol chametz achar chatzot yom arba asar. Not only on Pesach you can't eat, even on the Erev Pesach, after chatzot, after midday, you can't eat chametz. Shene'emar lo tochal lav chametz. No eating chametz on that day, on the first day, before Pesach. Reish, 200. Shelo yera'eh chametz. You can't even see chametz in your property. Shene'emar lo yera'eh lecha chametz. No chametz should be seen. Reish aleph shelo yimatzeh chametz, or seor. It should not be found chametz. Shene'emar seor lo yimatzeh bevatechem.
Wait, so what is all this business of selling chametz and you keep it?
So if you sell it, you don't own it. Katuv b'Gemara, lo yimatzeh means aval ata motzeh et shel nochri. You can find a goy's chametz in your house.
But I have to cover it.
But you have to cover it. Shelo yera'eh, you can't see it, you can't find it. Reish bet, shelo yishteh hanazir yayin. If a person takes upon himself a vow to become a nazir, holy to God, he cannot drink wine. V'lo davar shenitarev bo yayin, or anything that wine got mixed in. V'ta'amo ketam yayin, or it tastes like wine. Shene'emar v'chol mishrat anavim, any mixture of grapes he can't eat. V'afilu hechmitz hayayin, or davar shenitarev bo yayin, even if it became vinegary or vinegar brandy. Harei zeh asur alav, it's forbidden. Shene'emar chometz yayin, v'chometz shichar lo yishteh, even vinegar wine, vinegar brandy you can't drink. Reish Gimel shelo yochal anavim lachim. A nazir cannot eat moist, fresh grapes. Shene'emar v'anavim lachim. Fresh grapes are forbidden. Reish Dalid shelo yochal anavim miveshim. No dry grapes. Shene'emar v'iveshim lo yochel. Raisins, exactly.
Still talking about the nazir.
Still the nazir. Reish Hey shelo yochal chartzanim. A nazir cannot eat grape seeds. Shene'emar mechartzanim lo yochel. No seeds to be eaten. Reish Vav shelo yochal zugin. He cannot eat peels. Shene'emar va'adzag lo yochel. Also the peels of a grape he can't eat. Reish Zayin shelo yitama hanazir lamet. A nazir cannot become tamei, can't touch a dead body. Shene'emar le'avivu le'imo lo yitama. Even his father or mother can't become impure. Reish Chet shelo yikanes bo'el hamet. He cannot go into the same room as a dead body. Shene'emar al nefesh met lo yavo. He cannot come into a dead body. Reish Tet shelo yigaleach hanazir. He can't shave his head. Shene'emar tar lo ya'avor al rosho. No razor should be on his head. And now we move on to agricultural laws. Laws in the field. We're almost done. Reish Yud shelo liktzor kolas, that you can't cut your entire field. You have to leave a corner to the poor. You cannot cut off the corner of your field entirely. While you're gathering stalks, if some of them fall down, you can't gather them. Leave them for the poor. Things that fall, you can't take.
Is it redundant compared to the positive commandments that we are having? It's redundancy.
Like if you already said leave the corner, don't say don't cut the whole field. when it wants to make you transgress, aseh velo taseh, laharot lecha chumra shel hadavar, how strict it is, you get 2 mitzvot, 2 averot. Reish Yud Bet, shelo livtzor ololot hakerem. Any not mature or grapes that grows funny, you can't cut it. Shene'emar v'charmecha lo te'olel. If it doesn't grow in a cluster, if it doesn't grow fully to maturity, you have to leave it for the poor. Reish Yud Gimel shelo l'kot peret hakerem. Any grapes that fall down while you're harvesting, you can't take it. Shene'emar peret karmecha lo telaket. You cannot gather the fallen grapes. Reish Yud Daled shelo likach omer hashikha. If you forgot to cut a certain stalk, you can't go back and take it. Shene'emar lo tshulukachto. Do not return. V'chein kol ha'elanot. Also, all trees have shikha. If you forget to cut, you can't take it. Shene'emar lo tafer acharecha. Don't return to beautify the tree, to cut it off. Reish Tedvav shelo lizroa kil ezraim. You cannot plant mixture of plants, wheat and barley together. Shene'emar sadcha lo tizra kilayim. You cannot plant your field mixtures. Reish Tedzayin shelo lizroa tvua o yarak bakerem. You can't plant grain or vegetables into a vineyard. Shene'emar lo tizra karmecha kilayim. Before we learned you can't eat it. Now we learn you can't even plant it. Reish Yud Zayin 2:17. Shelo laharbia behema min b'she'eno mino. You can't breed animals, crossbreed them. You can't take a cow, and a goat and put them together like that.
What about mules? Mules are...
Again, same thing. Goyim can do it. Once you have it, you have it.
We can do it.
Jews can't make it. Do not mix your animals as mixtures. You can't have 2 types of animals doing shor v'chamor. Exactly. You cannot plow your field with an ox and a donkey together. If an animal could eat and enjoy it while it's working, you have to let it eat. You can't muzzle it. If it's bad for the animal, give it diarrhea, whatever, then you could do whatever you want. But if it's going to have pleasure, you can't stop it. Don't muzzle an ox in its threshing. You cannot work the ground on Shemitah. Don't plant your field. Also trees you can't work on Shemitah. No cutting your vineyard. If you have something that grows wild, you didn't plant it, it grew on its own, but it's during Shemitah, you can't cut it like you would the rest of the year. Reish Chav Gimel. Shelo le'asof perot ha'ilan b'shvi'it kederech she'osfin b'chol shana v'shana. You can't gather your fruits of your field on Shemitah like you do every year. Shene'emar ve'etin v'in yizirecha lo tivtzor. You can't cut your vineyard, your grapes. Reish Chav Daled. Shelo la'avod b'shnat Yovel ben Adama ben Ilan. On Yovel, the 50th year, you can't work the ground or the trees. Shene'emar lo tizrau. No planting. Reish Chav Aleph. Shelo diktzor svichei Yovel. Again, if you have wild growths on Yovel, you can't cut them. No harvesting the aftergrowths. No gathering the fruits of Yovel like other years. No harvesting the separated fruits. You cannot sell a field in Israel forever. It always goes back by Yovel. Do not sell the land forever. Once you give a Levi a city or an open area, you can't change it. The field of the open area for their cities, no selling. It means you can't change the location. Never forsake the Leviim. They have no land, they have no inheritance, they have no place. You have to help them. Guard yourself. Don't leave the Levi alone. Give them their gifts, maaser, and make them happy every Yom Tov. Give them what you can. Reish Lamed. If Shemitah passes, you can no longer demand your loans. No demanding your friend. Reish Lamed Aleph. 231. But since you know that they're going to get canceled in 7 years, you're going to say, I'm not going to lend anybody. No, you can't hold back from lending money just because of Shemitah. Especially the year before, exactly. Guard yourself, let there be nothing in your heart that will stop you from lending. This is the rule. If it says these 3 words in the Torah, it means a negative commandment. Never stop yourself from helping a poor man live or giving him what he needs. Don't close your heart. It comes out, If you give tzedakah, you're giving a positive mitzvah. If you don't give tzedakah, you hide your eyes from giving. You didn't do a do mitzvah, and you also did a don't do mitzvah. When your Jewish slave goes out free, you cannot send him away empty-handed. You have to give him presents. Don't send him empty. If you know somebody is poor, you can't demand, where's my money? Where's my loan? Don't bother him. You can't be a creditor to him. No giving ribit, interest, to a Jew. Don't lend your money with a bite, which means with ribit. Don't borrow with ribit. Don't let your brother bite you. This is a warning to the borrower. You shouldn't give the bite, you shouldn't give the extra interest to the lender. Don't be involved. If somebody is doing an interest loan, you cannot be involved there. You can't be a guarantor, you can't be a witness, you can't be a scribe to write a document. Don't put on anybody ribit. Don't delay in paying a worker. Don't keep the payment of the worker overnight with you. You can't forcibly take a collateral from somebody if he owes you money. Don't come to his house to get his money, to get his objects. If the guy needs his stuff back, he gave you a watch as collateral, but he needs it during the day, you can't stop him. Don't sleep with his object in your house. Don't sleep with his object by you, rather return it by night, since he needs it at night. Do not make a widow give you collateral. You can't take the clothes of a widow. You cannot take as collateral stuff that's used in making food. No taking millstones as a pledge. No kidnapping any Jews. In the Ten Commandments, lo tignov means zug nevat nefesh. It means stealing people. No stealing money. You cannot steal zug nevat mamon. This is robbery of money.